After a marathon, Lok Sabha elections 2024 spread across 6 weeks, the second longest election, general election since 1951-52. It's time for the exit polls to be true or to not to be true. We are waiting for the final results on the 4th of June. Of course, a big win by the ruling BJP-led NDA has been predicted by at least 12 exit polls that we saw today. The NDTV has done a poll of polls. The exit polls have also predicted NDA's dominance in states like Karnataka and Maharashtra, and the left, which is the LDF alliance's route in Kerala. In Bengal, the exit polls predicted a better performance for the BJP than it did last time. Last time, remember, it won 18 of the 42 seats. This time, exit polls have predicted that the BJP could be winning about 22 seats. Most exit polls have said that the BJP will now be the single largest party in Bengal in terms of Lok Sabha seats. But of course, there's a health warning. Exit polls are not always accurate.
370 पार करेंगे। एक तरफा वोट किया है भारतीय जनता पार्टी को, मोदी जी को जनता ने। ना तो कांग्रेस का कोई भविष्य बचा है और ना राहुल गांधी जी का भविष्य बचा है। 400 पार एनडीए निश्चित तौर पर 4 तारीख को हम 400 पार होंगे और अकेली बीजेपी 370 पार करेगी।
You know, exit polls are deeply unscientific. We all know this. I think last year the majority of exit polls got the results wrong in Chhattisgarh and Madhya Pradesh and Rajasthan. These things happen. I mean, so to my mind, what we are interested in is the real poll. That is the ballots, the votes of Janta Janardhan. To my mind, the only poll that matters is what actually went into the machines when people press the button, and I think we'll have to see those before we come to any reaction. I don't see the BJP gaining much ground in the south. All accounts are they will lose significantly in Karnataka, and they certainly won't gain in either Tamil Nadu or Kerala.
So what do the exit poll numbers say about the Indian voter? How much can these numbers be trusted? To discuss all of this, we have with us Aditi Phadnis, who's a journalist, author and political and social commentator. And also we have Neerja Chaudhary, author and political commentator. Thank you so much for joining us. Aditi ma'am, to you first. What are your key takeaways from these polls? And you have been telling me that there is a certain sense of search for the BJP, despite, you know, all of us sort of in some ways disagreeing with you because there seemed to be a semblance of a contest. But clearly the numbers seem to say that the Indian voter may not be very euphoric on the street, but he must be, he is clearly sort of in some ways enamored with the work that Mr. Modi has done, and he or she is going and voting for him or her quietly and coming back.
That is an excellent summary, Vasudha, and that is what I really believe. In my travels across India, in UP as well as in Telangana as well as in Punjab, I found that people were tending to favor the BJP despite themselves. There was a sense of disillusionment and discontent, but it was not enough to make them vote for the opposition. This is because the BJP has clearly delivered on many of its promises, but people were not happy on many other issues. Topmost among this was employment, issues of unemployment, issues of the supposed change in the constitution, which is what a lot of people were really worried about. And social issues like social relations between religious minorities and the majority.
Right.
These were repeated concerns expressed in different forms across India.
Right. Neerja Chaudhary, there was a lot of focus on caste and reservation throughout this election, with the Prime Minister talking about Muslim quotas and the opposition in some way suggesting that there could be some altering with the reservation policy. How much of that do you think resonated with people? Because the numbers seem to be very similar to what the numbers showed in 2019.
Yeah, are you asking me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, yes. You know, when it all started out and I went to Western UP, which was the hub of Hindu-Muslim conflict in 2014 and nationalistic fervor on Pulwama and Balakot in 2019, and every single person, you know, and I'm saying this, every single person, not one exception, including the candidate, said to me, this is not a Hindu-Muslim election. And then subsequent rounds, the Prime Minister polarized it on Hindu-Muslim lines. How much traction it had, I don't know, but it's certainly the idea, one of the ideas was to rev up the Kada, which had, the Kada was really thanda. It's sitting at home and not come out. They were not the usual Jai Shri Ram slogan. Posters, banners, of course, were missing and so on. Now, did he manage to polarize the situation, to consolidate the Hindu vote bank behind him? I think the Hindu vote bank is already consolidated behind him. Because, I was very interested that the Jatavs in a West UP village told me, had Mayawati, and they were BSP supporters, had Mayawati fielded a Muslim from here, we would have voted for the BJP. So the Hindu identity is already there. The Hinduization has already taken place. The Prime Minister is seen as a Rakshak of Hindu interests. And I agree with Aditi. There was a louder expression of dissatisfaction on prices and joblessness than in the past election. In a sense, these voices were louder than even the Karyakartas of the BJP and the RSS, which also, we were told had not come out the way they normally used to do. Now, that dissatisfaction to convert into a vote and a seat is the challenge that the opposition faced. And obviously, if the direction, whatever be the numbers on June 4th, the direction of the victory is pretty well clear from all the exit polls.
Right.
And it has been, people prefer to go in for continuity. Some even said to me, there is the words were strong and silent, loyal vote base that Narendra Modi has created in the last 10 years.
Right.
Some others, of course, who were unhappy and dissatisfied, but didn't want to vote for the other side. There were many in that category, said this is a no option election. So the real challenge is for the opposition and the Congress party, why despite the prevalence of dissatisfaction, and I agree, it was only a santosh and not akrosh, not anger.
Right.
Why have they not been able to convert it and allowed the BJP a larger number of seats?
Right.
And after 10 years, it is quite amazing if you look at it. And to break new ground in the eastern part of India and southern part of India.
Right.
I mean, there is something to learn from there. Yeah. What is it that the BJP does right and what is it that the opposition does wrong?
Right. Aditi ma'am, when I talk to the Congress people, they tell me that, we did better than 2019, this projection of opposition unity. Rahul Gandhi did 2 big Bharat Jodo Yatras. We were prepared better than we were in 2019 is their sense. Of course, he shunned the mainstream media. He took on social media. He picked up issues like social justice, caste. What do you think that the opposition could have done better? And also, there's an associated question. What does coming back to power for the third term mean for the legacy of the Prime Minister? Because, he's also seen as a personality and a person who can't be countered that easily.
Well, the third term is going to be slightly, or rather the mandate for the third term has been achieved in a slightly different manner than in the second term. I saw a kind of review stroke critique of the Prime Minister in the lowest levels of voters that I have never seen before.
Okay.
So yes, they are coming back with a big majority. I think that's unarguable, but there is a certain sense of questioning about the Prime Minister, which was not there earlier.
Okay.
I mean, that frenzy, that fervor of 2014. There's something new happening. There's change that was noticeably absent.
Right.
Conspicuously absent. For the opposition, it's hard to say what they've done wrong and what they could, how they could recreate themselves. But this much is clear that even Aam Aadmi Party, despite all the fuss over how it has taken away the Congress vote bank, etc., appears to be not doing so well.
Right.
Aam Aadmi Party is the newest iteration of the opposition. And I think then we have to revisit our assumptions about what people want from the opposition.
That's an excellent way of saying this, and there is a message in that as to all of us need to reevaluate as to what really the voter wants today. Neeja ma'am, there was one narrative of North-South divide that the Congress also put forward, and electorally also it showed that the Congress was doing better in the south of India, but exit polls have said that BJP could be retaining or maybe just to have a few losses in the state of Karnataka, which is seen as a laboratory for the opposition's welfare promises. And also in Telangana, the BJP could be making huge gains. What happens to this North-South divide, this whole political narrative that the Congress has projected, and a lot of us actually also believe in? Do you think that this is a setback to that?
I think, people, it seems, have voted nationally. At a state level, they may vote very differently because they see a clear alternative in A, B, C, D. And I must say that our elections have become increasingly presidential in nature. People are voting for the prime minister. They are not voting for the party that will rule India. That is the different mindset that is, kicked in. And I think the opposition has to take note of that. But on the north-south, in Telangana, Karnataka, where the Congress governments are in power and the Congress was expected to do better, it may still do better than the exit polls have shown. But overall, it seems that people were voting for the Prime Minister, not for the local leadership or local issues, even though the opposition tried to make it Modi versus local. As far as the north-south divide is concerned, for a geographic divide to coincide with a political divide, meaning that BJP is party of the north and the west, and Congress is a party of the south and regional parties of the south, that is not a very happy situation. So I'm personally happy that if the BJP does well in the south and finds a presence in the south, because there are going to be problems we are going to face. The north-south issues are already coming to the fore. The southern chief ministers have talked about tax terrorism. There's delimitation on the cards in 2026, and the home minister has already said we are not going to defer it. Justice will be done to the southern states. And so you will need the political mechanisms to navigate those difficulties, those minefields. And if the BJP has a presence, political presence in the south, it's going to enable it to do that. So also is the case with the Congress and the opposition parties in the north, in the Hindi heartland. They need to get their act together and have those mechanisms in place.
Right.
I mean, Congress cannot afford to be wiped out of UP.
Right.
It's not a good thing.
Absolutely.
So I think those are challenges that await us.
Right.
So let's see how this new BJP, which now has a pan-Indian presence if the exit polls come true,
Right.
Navigates those challenges.
One quick last word from you on how the prevalent narratives will also have to be reviewed, once these elections get over.
Well, all narratives will have to be reviewed. The narrative that the BJP is super strong because it's come back for a third term, they will be ignoring issues of unemployment and livelihood at their peril. Similarly, the opposition will have to reinvent its positions and understand where it's gone wrong. I'm not sure if they will do it with sincerity, but it has to be revisited.
Right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Aditi Phadnis, and thank you, Neeja Chaudhary, for giving us those excellent insights on how this election also will make us reflect on what the Indian voter actually wants and who she is actually voting for. Thank you so much for joining us. Moving on to other news of the day, Congress leader Ajay Maken on Saturday has flagged the new rule that candidates' counting agents are not allowed at the assistant returning officer tables during the vote counting process on the 4th of June. CEO Delhi, of course, has rubbished these claims, and he has said on X that it is clarified that the counting agents of candidates are allowed at the tables of the ROs and AROs. Ajay Maken's tweet on X, candidates counting agents at the ARO table are not being allowed for the first time. I have contested 9 Lok Sabha and Vidhan Sabha elections in the past, and this is happening for the first time. If true, this is bigger than the alleged EVM rigging. I am flagging this issue for all candidates. I hope ECI rectifies it soon. This is what Mr. Maken has said today. Of course, the CEO has replied to this, and he has said that it is clarified that the counting agents of candidates are allowed at the tables of the ROs and the AROs.